What if every experience, every hardship, every obstacle was given to you, not to break you, but to mold you and strengthen you? What if the center of your suffering was actually the key to ultimate health? And what if your own pain was meant to be the catalyst for your greatest purpose? Welcome to Buddha Belly Life, empowering purpose, mind to microbiome. Welcome to the Buddha Belly Life podcast, you guys. Today we are joined by Dr. Mandy Walia. Dr. Walia is a renowned functional medicine practitioner and the founder of Gain Wellness Center in San Diego, California. She was born in India and raised in Canada. She pursued her passion for science at McMaster University, earning a Bachelor of Science and a Master's in Science in biology and psychology. Physiology. Her research, founded by the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada, led to several publications. And with over 19 years of experience, Dr. Walia specializes in gut health, guys, and offers holistic, safe, and effective health solutions. She focuses on identifying and addressing the root causes of health issues, believing that food forms the foundation of our cells and hormones. Dr. Walia's philosophy emphasizes the transformative power of gut health in enhancing overall wellness. In addition to her professional achievements, Dr. Walia is a dedicated wife and mother of 3. She enjoys hiking and actively promotes stress management and wellness. At Gain Wellness Center, she combines her extensive knowledge and global perspective to provide personalized care, inspiring others on their journey to better health. Oh, yes. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Mandy Walia.
Thank you for having me, Coach Britt, on this podcast today.
Absolutely. I am so excited to talk with you. So, I'm a mom too. So I, especially like the professionals that are wives and mothers, and not to leave anybody else out, but congratulations to you for being such a well-rounded powerhouse and caretaker for not only obviously little humans, but for so much of the world. I love that.
I absolutely agree with you. And I always say this, I'm a better mom because I work, and I'm better at work because I'm a mom.
Right. It's the balance of life. I totally, as long as we're just conscientious with our time, right? We compartmentalize the pieces of our caretaking, right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about you. So give the audience, I guess, a little bit of info about what you do, but also what I'd like to know too is, how did you get here? Was it just an academic focus for you, or was there like a personal story and experience kind of behind you entering this space of functional medicine?
Great question. And I think initially it was academically because I was raised in India. I moved to Canada when I was about 16 years of age. And I started to attend McMaster University, where I got heavily involved with the research department. But what happened is, 13 years ago, I was living my dream life, really. And I was married, had 3 beautiful, healthy children, and I had a medically integrated practice here in San Diego, helping people get out of chronic pain without the use of drugs and surgeries. Now, one of the main reasons I was able to do this is my in-laws, Ravi and Paul, moved all across in their retirement to be close to our family. And my oldest daughter, who was 5 at the time, Mansi, started to have really close relationship with her grandparents. Ravi would cook traditional Indian food, sing nursery rhymes, read books to them. And when my son turned about 1 year of age, we took a family vacation to Hong Kong. And after 10 days when we got back, Ravi was so excited to have us back. But I started to notice as I got over my jet lag that Ravi didn't look well. She was not eating, even though she was tired at night, she couldn't go to sleep. She had lost a lot of weight. And each time she went to her family doctor and was done some testing, and each time sent home saying all looks normal. Yet she progressively got worse. And if you asked her, she would say, I'm fine, don't worry about me, you do what you have to do. Now, finally, I'm a doctor. I called 911, took her to the emergency department. And upon battery of testing and imaging, we discovered stage 4 lymphoma cancer.
Oh.
And as gut-wrenching at that time as was to hear the C word, good news was that chemotherapy was a good answer for that kind of cancer. And Ravi wanted to go through any treatment. So we took her for her first session for chemotherapy, and she was surrounded by the best doctors in the ICU. And 30 minutes into the procedure, we lost Ravi.
Oh my goodness.
And all I could think at that point was that my younger two will never get to know Ravi like Mansi did. The ICU doctor standing next to me turned to me and said, "You see, Mandy, if Ravi's body was healthy from inside, chemotherapy would have worked for her." I was so frustrated by that statement because I knew for years she was going to her doctor. She was trying to eat healthy. She was trying to exercise. When her blood pressure went up, they put her on blood pressure medication. She was going for her physical checkups every year. She was getting the blood test done regularly. And when her cholesterol started to go up, they put her on cholesterol medication. When her joint pain was diagnosed as rheumatoid arthritis, they gave her that medication. When she couldn't sleep at night, they put her on antidepressants. And Ravi was taking all her medications on time as prescribed by her doctors. So those words you see, Mandy, if Ravi's body was healthy from inside, chemotherapy would have worked for her, really did change my perspective on health. And that's where I made this academic shift of just relying on medicine, running to the doctors for the questions. I started to ask different questions. And today at Gain Wellness Center, I really do help people identify the root causes of their health concerns. Because really, in essence, what's missing is I didn't want to end up in the same way as health, not just in health as Ravi, but as many doctors who she kept going to for many years for chronic problems. And other than drugs and medications, they never really found the true root causes of her conditions.
Wow. Oh, what a heartbreaking story. And is this your mother-in-law?
It's my mother-in-law, yes.
And obviously, like, how neat that you guys have such a close family. And I feel like culturally, in that sense too, like, I bet that there was a lot of autonomy and respect for your marital home and your adulthood while still having such a close bond with parents, and to be so close with especially your in-laws and a family like that. Like, what a blessing that you were to her though, and to your children and stuff through that process before that, and for her to give you the gift of inspiration to give to others where we couldn't save someone close to us. Right?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm very grateful for that. And it did shifted my perspective quite a bit. And now looking back at my last 10 years of what I've been able to achieve and how I've been able to help people, motivate them, inspire them to start taking control of their health. I'm not against conventional medical system, but what I learned through this journey is they can only save us if we're in a good place ourselves, because it is a reactive medicine. A lot of those things are meant for acute problems. Our medical healthcare system is the best when it comes to acute problems. Especially, I've lived in India, I've lived in Canada, and I've been in San Diego for over 20 years. And I truly believe that we have the best healthcare system when it comes to acute problems, but not for chronic diseases.
No. And especially if you understand the root of chronic disease. I actually was just having this talk with a young mom today, because I had birthed all my children naturally, and I actually had them all at home because I live within very close shot to our emergency center if need be. But I had all my kids at home in a pool, and she had her children at home in a pool too. And so we were talking about that. We were talking about the place for, medicine for acute care. And yet it's gotten so confused because because of our declining health as a nation, because of our environment and our diets and all the things, because of our declining chronic health conditions, that some of that acute care principle was applied to these functional root malfunctions of the body that are multifaceted, right? So we're trying to just essentially band-aid symptoms like you would sew up fix a broken leg because the bone's broken. Okay, well, what do we need? Let's crack it back together and give it a pill for the pain, right? And they're trying to do that with stuff that's root caused. And that's why we're just in those medications. What's your opinion on that? Because those medications, in my opinion, once you're on one, it's not long before you're on another, and then you take another for the side effects and what this is doing to the body by having to depend on what I call prescription life support.
Yeah, and I love how you started this. You said that you birthed your children at home. However, you were mindful that there is an acute center nearby or urgent care or emergency. And I think that's what I want a lot of listeners to really pay attention to. Because I feel like even today, as much as functional medicine now, I mean, I'm talking 10 years ago when I started delving into this, it was not heard of as much. But now with our social media, I mean, functional medicine is everywhere at this point. Mm-hmm. But with that, there is a lot of misinformation as well, because people think that they either need to be only believing in functional medicine, yes, or they need to be just in medical. And I think where I stand, coming from looking at it from research perspective, I think we still need a bridge of both of them. And that's where individualization comes in. And that's where we need to stop really blaming our doctors and saying, well, they're not teaching me what to eat. Yeah. It's not their job to teach us what to eat. No. Their job is to protect us from the acute problems, and they have every means in their tool chest what they could do. And sometimes I do feel medication is necessary. If you have had your thyroid removed, I mean, mm-hmm. I'm so happy they're there to help them, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not about just picking one or the other, but finding a balance for some of us, like for most of us, finding that balance of what do we need. But I really, truly believe, and it's my philosophy, that foods make most of your cells. Foods also make your hormones, right? Mm-hmm. So that means it is affecting our overall health. And in chronic problems, you can't wake up and say, let me just focus on my heart. Let me just focus on my gut. Let me just focus on my liver. It's just not going to work, right? I mean, we got to have the understanding that our body is connected. Versus in acute problems, if you have a knee injury, you want an ortho to be looking at that. If it's a heart problem, you want a cardiologist on your side. So I think having some of those understandings and connecting the dots is really essential at this point, kind of merging functional medicine and traditional conventional medical system together.
Do you have a desire for fulfillment? Does helping people tap into their own health mentally, emotionally, and physically fire you up? Do you believe in the impact of the gut microbiome on overall wellness? You may be an HWCA coach. For more info on our cutting-edge health coach trainings, visit hwcacoach.com.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that's kind of what actual functional medicine is or should be, because I feel like we had like holistic or naturopathic health, medicine, which for a while, might just be people, like you said, just only on one side, or only do, only herbal treatments, only everything natural, absolutely not doing anything else. And then we had that. And I feel like that's where actual functional medicine, if people understood it, that's where it came in, because a functional medicine practitioner usually has some type of medical training and access to, or at least referral ability to, some kind of, traditional medical care.
Yeah. But I encourage people more so saying, hey, rather than asking what symptoms you have, start focusing on why you have those symptoms in the first place. I think that's what functional medicine is all about. And as I started my journey after my health crisis personally with my mother-in-law, I started to notice that really when I went to different conferences, started to look into functional medicine a little bit more into detail. I started going to a lot of Institute for Functional Medicine, which is science-based, evidence-based, which I was very happy to delve into. And I was like, really, are we going to tell people to just sleep better, eat more, eat better? I mean, is that really the true foundation of overall health and wellness really is? And as I delved into it more and more, I started to notice we're surrounded by a lot of toxins. Liver is a crucial organ. But if you go even more upstream and start to ask those questions, that's where gut just kept coming back. I mean, I think we've known forever, ever since medicine was discovered, that all diseases start in the gut. And it could not be truer now than ever before, I feel.
Yes. And people, I think they think it's like a buzzword. Like when I started working in this 8 years ago, people did, they were just starting to hear it. And so they think maybe it's a trendy thing. And that's where I think education comes into play, because like you, so my passion is mental health. So lucky for me, lucky and unlucky. So anxiety, I have such a past with panic and anxiety, like as early as age 4. And so but how that would manifest a lot is in hypochondria. And so it's no wonder that I'm in, functional wellness and this space, because what would a person who's like a total hypochondriac, they're either going to run to the MD all the time unless they have real anxiety where they don't trust that, like me. Yeah. And so that's where, so what are you going to do? You're going to seek education because you don't know that anyone else can just understand or give you the right information. So education, when I was researching this chronic anxiety and these, the infertility issues I had and all these things, I was like hormones. And so I totally thought I was headed toward hormones. I was like, I am specializing in hormones. I'm looking at that. And like you said, that's what happened to me. Hormones led right to that gut. And you know what else led to the gut? Every single other thing I could think of, all the chronic issues that are in my family history, the type 2 diabetes, the strokes, the heart disease, all of it came back to the gut. And it was like, and it wasn't a buzzword anymore.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I discovered going to different conferences and looking at different studies, that functional medicine is more about obviously listening to your body and understanding what your body is telling you, but also more importantly, getting to the root causes of these symptoms rather than just focusing on the symptoms and suppressing them by taking medications or by eliminating foods or by just taking prebiotics and probiotics. I mean, unfortunately, we need to actually focus even more back to that, is the integrity of the gut wall lining. Is it absorbing? Is it digesting? Because I do find a lot of people who are frustrated with this because they're like, well, I've tried changing my diet. I eat all organic. I eat really well. I exercise. And it's obviously there is no link, right? But I'm excited because there's a lot more research that's coming up now and more cutting edge that's actually saying that a lot of these hormonal dysfunctions are truly related to digestion and gut health, which was at one point, even going back a few years, it wasn't the case. It wasn't as mainstream as it is now.
Agreed. And what are your thoughts? I know my opinion on this and what I see with a lot of the coaches and stuff. But when people say I eat so healthy, there's a few different things that I feel like we need to ask in this, and for people that can relate to this, like one, okay, what is that? Because a lot of people think they eat healthy, but we need to know like what that actually means. And two, if they have a very permeable gut, so we see like a really leaky gut, and so how, I want to know what you think about this, then we can see food reactivity and inflammation happening from things that maybe aren't actually really unhealthy, but the gut is just in such a bad state, or there's stress and experiences, which I won't get ahead of myself because I want to get into that in a minute, but the state of their gut for a multitude of reasons may not even be responding to a seemingly healthy diet. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I love how you connected all the dots for me already. But I do notice that about 10 years ago, when I started my journey of only focusing on lifestyle programs and working with my practice members, I found that we had to really make a lot of changes in their diet. But I would say since COVID, since 2020 till now, in the last 3 to 4 years, I'm noticing that I get a lot more practice members who have modified a lot of their diets and nutrition plans, and they are actually seemingly eating really well. But now the question is, and they're testing like insane amount of testing you can do nowadays online. Functional health testing has become available for a lot of people, and food sensitivity, like you said. But if the gut is on fire, it doesn't matter if you're putting good foods or bad foods in there. If your gut wall lining is not absorbing, digesting, or if there is gut dysbiosis, which obviously many of us could have, which is due to chronic stress. In a modern world, chronic stress is our best friend nowadays. Right. Also, poor diet in the past, not now, but in the past, even if you make changes now, you still might have inflammation in the gut. I think that's where these people feel more discouraged, because they're like, we don't eat fast food, we don't eat out, we are eating organic and good foods and being mindful. So I think that's where you have to connect the dots and look at this as a vicious cycle that they're stuck in. And I always, 95% of the time when I work with my practice members, we address gut first,
Absolutely. And that's awesome. And so I got to ask you, when it comes to hormones, because I know that's a big thing we're talking about now. And I will say for me, so we've got a lot of stuff coming up now that we notice, right? High levels of, or high, we now have something called PMDD, right? Which is, we have all these kinds of things. Everyone's talking about perimenopause, even in their 30s, easily. So what are your thoughts on a lot of these hormonal malfunction issues, especially so many happening at really much earlier, like pre-menopause times in life?
Yes, I love this question, but it's a loaded question. So I'm going to try my best to kind of explain on how my views are right now.
Yeah.
So it's not that more women have perimenopausal symptoms or menopausal symptoms. Number one, there is a lot more awareness, right? Because the role of women in our modern society has changed. I mean, I've lived in India. I've seen my grandparents go through, or women who are older in India go through perimenopause. I mean, they had hot flashes, they had night sweats, they had all these things, same that I experienced in Canada with another generation of women there. But as we have entered the workforce, it's affecting us. And I'm so happy that there are a lot of functional medicine providers. They have really brought hormones in really a front light at this time. But that's also causing a lot of confusion now with women, because the main question that everybody asks is, should we all be on hormone replacement therapy? I mean, in the last year or so, because more research is coming out how it's not causing cancer, but in fact, some of those hormones can be linked to protecting from many cancers and cardiovascular risk diseases. So now the question becomes, okay, so if I'm a perimenopausal woman at the age of 30, like you said, which many women can be, even though typical age in the US is about anywhere from 50 to 51, do we start taking hormone replacement therapy at the age of 30? And if we're living in our mid 80s, does that mean we're going to continue? When do we get off? I mean, this is a general question that I'm getting a lot of. So I've started to delve into research even a lot more. So this is what my opinion is. I believe hormones are very essential. They're chemical messengers in our body that are communicating between different organ systems. When you go through perimenopause, especially in women 3 different times in our life, you must remember when you went through puberty, as our hormones are ramping up, how do we feel, right? You've given birth, I've given birth 3 times. How do we feel when the hormones are ramping up when we're pregnant? And how do we feel when the hormones are ramping down after giving birth, right? We need time to make that shift after giving birth, take time. But if you are a woman who has to get into workforce maybe 5 days after giving birth, you're not getting that time in order to kind of get those hormones regularly. Now, cortisol, which is our stress hormone, is increasing. And then the next phase in women's life is perimenopause. That's when hormones are on the downward shift naturally, right? But again, if hormones can be made by foods, then why is it that we have to only rely on hormone replacement therapy? We don't. So, but there is a set of women who would have to, given their history, but it's a very loaded question, because for every woman, what I would say is it's not cookie cutter method. Just like food, nutrition is not cookie cutter, exercise is not cookie cutter. What we are given in our life circumstances is not cookie cutter. We have to deal with our stress, emotional stress that's around. So if we start to take into account physical, chemical, and emotional stress into effect, and we've managed all those things really well, we can fill the gap with hormone replacement therapy if we are at the age of perimenopause or postmenopausal.
That's a brilliant wrap up. I love how you did it. And you can do it with the right person in your corner, like Dr. Walia, who's got all this expertise and knows what to thoroughly look for, instead of just your rando people that are like, oh, this is, they're trying to speak these cookie cutter pieces. I'm going to just tell you a quick story, a personal testimony about me, because I think it supports what you say, and see what you think about this. So I had working in gut health for so long, right? I had almost eradicated any serious anxiety, panic attacks, and things like that, right? Like serious panic attacks, like the stuff that I dealt with since age 4, mind you. Okay. So this wasn't until like 30, right? And even diet and exercise, I mean, there was help, but it wasn't until gut health that I really had made massive headway. So it wasn't until about 3 years at the time into raising 6 children in a blended family with a husband who was very busy all over the place with business, real estate, and like all kinds of chaos, right? And doing my best because I'm a very intentional person. So I'm like, if it's hard, I'm not just like, this is hard, don't do it. I'm like, okay, this is hard. So how can we do it? That's how I function, right? So some of us like women, like some of us get that. How can we do it? Not where should we not be doing it? And so it wasn't until I stopped breastfeeding my last daughter. It was within months of being done breastfeeding her that all of a sudden I got hit with panic attacks and ocular migraines, which are the scariest things ever. And it had been over a decade, and, I kept trying to climb out of that. And then it wasn't until shortly after that again, my Hashimoto's, my thyroid antibodies were up. I was anemic, which made me feel horrible. And yet I was doing all the things with my food, with my gut health, with my exercise that I normally do. And I think that was my problem. I was doing all the things, and it took me an exponential amount of suffering. I mean, I was doing different testing, and luckily they put me on lots of supplements just to get some of those nutrients up because being anemic is horrible. But it really, as much as I'd been teaching for so many years that holistic gut health, so it's food and nutrition, but that our stress, trauma mindset is so powerful. As much as I'd been teaching it, it was such a reality to live it because I literally questioned perimenopause for a very, very, very long time and realized that I do think that excessive prolonged stress was throwing my hormones off horribly and throwing my body into a whole state just from stress alone. Yeah.
And also your gut microbiome is what I would say at that point. So even though you were healthy, you had some stress and things. So you're probably fixing your diet, fixing your exercise routine, probably helped manage some of your emotional stress. Obviously, you're putting less chemical stress into your body if you're eating more mindfully. But it takes time over the years till with those supplements. I'm not against supplements, but when are we going to start taking those supplements, right? I mean, some of us need digestive enzymes, but do we need digestive enzymes before every meal for the rest of our life? Or are we going to take the time to figure out why are we not digesting? Now, I can understand somebody has gallbladder removal, somebody has some underlying medical conditions, but that's such a smaller population. I mean, most of us don't need to just for preventative reasons start taking digestive enzymes or start doing, we need diversity is what I'm going to say. Right. We need diversity in food. Unfortunately, there is not one superfood. There is not one supplement. There is not one probiotic that's out there that's just good for general population,
Agreed. I so agree. And I think what I'd realized too is that as much work as I'd done on my physical body, I probably would have been in terrible, terrible shape if I hadn't done the things I had done. But I realized that chronic stress was undoing and strongly working against so many of the things that I was doing because it was just nonstop.
Yeah, and you bring a fair question because women especially, and I'm not just kind of regarding men here because I equally see men in my office who are equally stressed and dealing with the same thing. So I'm just saying, but women in general, our roles have changed over the years and we are taking more and more on ourselves. I mean, I say there is no 50-50. When I wake up in the morning, there are times when my practice members need me more. Maybe my employees at my office need me more. There are days when my kids need me more. There are days my husband needs me more. But I will also say there are days where I need myself the most, So there is no 50-50 balance that I can keep at career and raising a family and running a practice and getting my practice members to feel and function better. So what I've realized is that you need to wake up every single morning, and I'm a very intentional person as well. So setting an intention rather than of course I do some intentions for 3 months, 6 months, but to me, the way I win my day is setting those intentions every single day, every single morning and every single night.
And that's so necessary and so great. And I think, and not to make anything genderify anything. But I do think women just by nature, because we do have children, we are givers by nature. We are nurturers by nature. So it can be just so hard for us. I think I have a massive threshold mentally to put myself on the back burner. I have a massive threshold to endure, to make sure that everyone else is taken care of. And yet my body doesn't. And that's what we got to remember. Your body doesn't. Just because your mind does, doesn't mean your body does. And that's why, we'll start. I started falling apart physically. Like, what the heck is going on? Because my mind was going, you've done hard things for your whole life. You just keep doing hard things. Like, you're totally fine, and I wasn't making intention for me, because I was going, I'll make intention for me when everyone else is, I'll feed myself when everyone else is fed. And I had a family of 8 people, and someone else is always eating seconds and thirds and fourths, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah, there is no catching up time where you can just be ahead of the curve, But on that note, I will say the gut-brain axis is so important, right? Vagus nerve is the nerve that connects that gut to the brain. And, in fact, I want to say this study that was published in 2021 in Nature Reviews Endocrinology. And the focus was really on the impact of gut dysbiosis on cortisol regulation. Now, cortisol is our primary stress hormone. And what they found was when there are imbalances in the gut bacteria, it can lead to chronic low-grade inflammation. So it might be that you're in a good place yourself in life, but it's still contributing low-grade inflammation, and it disrupts your cortisol rhythms, which eventually causes more anxiety, more stress, and hormonal imbalances.
Right.
So I'm excited about a lot of this research that's out now. And there's another study in 2022 where they talked about gut bacteria role in producing short fatty chain acids. So this is a tip I want to give any listener who's listening. If you are so confused on what to eat, what to do, not sure which diet to follow, there is no cookie cutter method. Now, this study talked about, it was published in Cell Host and Microbe, and it talked about the effects of these short chain fatty acids and their effect on insulin and sex hormones. And this, I'm talking about potential therapeutic approaches for managing conditions like PCOS, infertility. In younger and younger women, we're seeing a lot of these imbalances, right? And the answer has always been to give them birth control pills. But again, short term would be fine. But if we stay on that long term, what effect is that going to have when you reach perimenopause or menopausal? So my response to that is pay attention to the foods. There is no cookie cutter method to foods either. These short chain fatty acids, you can get them from any food that's high in fiber. So focusing on whole grain foods. So if you've done that, you've cleaned up your diet, then delve deeper. But it should be done as a step-by-step process, right? Because if you're going to continue to not put good foods in, doesn't matter how much you heal your gut, there's always going to be imbalance, which is going to affect your mood, your sex drive, your hormones ultimately.
Yes. And I love that you said that, because I always focus on, so I have a lot of fitness people too that get involved. And I love when the fitness community starts training in gut health, because it's very necessary. And I know this, not everyone wants to hear this part, because it's big now to talk about macros, right? And I always say micros over macros. So even if they're gonna, be paying attention to their macronutrient ratios, it is really, we've worked with enough people that have some 10-pack abs and incredible looking bodies with wicked gut issues or indirect gut issues, that affect inflammation, pain, migraines, mental health, depression, because of that exact thing. You can get your macros all day long. You can even take down your body fat while not getting those fibers. And those fibers are what feed the gut bacteria that need to do everything in the body. And so I like that you brought that up, because that is a great example of how we can be eating so healthy and even look so healthy, but actually be completely.
Yeah. And
yes.
I love my fitness community as well. It's good you brought that up, because but they have a different mindset, right? I mean, I understand that, because listen, they can eat chicken and broccoli, same meal 3 times a day for a week when they're kind of focusing on their body, building muscle. That's all great when you but it's not sustainable forever for everybody. So diversity is the key, and understanding that and understanding composition of your body is so essential. Especially, I'm a perimenopausal woman myself at this time, so composition of body is going to change. And if we don't understand how to lower our stored body fat and gain more muscle, it doesn't matter workouts, no work. Sometimes you're doing everything good, but if your metabolism has slowed down because there is some gut dysbiosis, and I will say, I've never had anybody come to me who had hormonal imbalances and didn't have a gut issue alongside with it. So once it was not related, but now they're all related, right? So I don't jump to hormones at that time with somebody. I really try to focus on first the gut and repairing the gut, getting it to be balanced again, so that actually then we can test for hormones and see what the imbalance truly is in a person.
Yes. And don't you wish that more primary care physicians, because, people have their docs that they're going to, that if women, especially women, are coming to them, especially in these age ranges, 30s to 50s, and complaining of mental health concerns, it frustrates me that they're not asking about hormones or looking at, which obviously, like you and I know, you'd want to delve deeper into why the hormones and gut and everything. But even just asking about hormones, it's like, oh, you're struggling with anxiety or depression. Okay, here's your pill for anxiety or depression. And yet, like, we've seen this massive rise in mental health with women, specifically in these age ranges, and even in kids, right? Like, even in, like you talked about, the hormonal fluctuations of puberty and stuff that are a cause for major concern with mental health. And like, no one's asking that.
Yeah, nobody is asking these. And also I feel mental health, we cannot just throw antidepressants and drugs. They're necessary in certain conditions, but we have to dig deeper. We have to look into the gut. We have to understand hormones. I don't know if primary care doctors or our general practitioners, if that's something they are able to do, depending on what insurance companies are willing to consider what's medically necessary. So I tend to think that it's not our doctor's fault. We have to educate ourselves, and we have to kind of step outside of that system if we want to understand and go deeper into the root causes,
Hence functional medicine. And we're so grateful for you guys, because that's what our coaches push all day long. Is I always say, you be a coach all day long, but you better have a good Rolodex of functional medicine practitioners in your back pocket. A lot of coaches sometimes, and I try and talk them off that ledge, but I'm like, don't try and be the functional medicine doctor. Okay. Partner up with one. Partner up with the functional medicine doctor. And the more you could learn, the better. As health coaches go, the more, like, I understand a lot of stuff that could probably step outside of my scope of practice, which just better helps me connect people to, and it allows me to do my job as a coach, to get in their head and their heart a little bit and empower their journey and, talk about the process instead of trying to solve all the problems.
Yeah, and one of the other key factor is cortisol, which is a rhythmic-based, circadian rhythm-based hormone. Usually it's not tested in our medical society, right? Because who is going to want to go to a LabCorp or a Quest 4 times or at midnight to check what the levels are? And if you just checked it one time in the morning, you're not really going to get a true picture of somebody's adrenal function. But the issue becomes here is it is based on your lifestyle. So doctors don't have the time in the acute problems to be sitting with you and discussing your lifestyle. And listen, we can't do that in 1 or 2 visits. We can't do that as a wellness check once a year. So I like to really encourage and inspire people to start taking health in their own hands, understand the connection that our body is connected. Mindset is important. What you put inside of your body is good. It needs to be really good. And also movement, exercise. We've always known these foundations that are key, and they have not changed even in today's world, even though there is a lot more stress in the world,
Yes. And
so
even
lifestyle is your responsibility is what I'm saying.
Yes. And we always say, as coaches, we always say your client is their own best practitioner. As in like you individually hold the most data, and even the best practitioner, they need your assistance, and hence that liability. Cause I do see people too. They're like, my doctor did this and it had a bad effect, or they didn't do that, and now I'm this and this. And I'm like, man, I know that medicine, traditional medicine right now that we're used to, modern medicine, has disempowered people to think for themselves, and that is, or to step into their own bodies and research and do that. They kind of disempowered that. So I know that that's part of the reason for that. However, if we realize we need to do that, then we don't hold our practitioner to everything, because, I can bring better data to a practitioner because I do research on my own and I do pay attention to my own body. So then I can tell them things that are relevant and important, and they don't have to go digging in my brain all day because I'm just showing up to an appointment, right?
Yeah, and we also have a lot of functional medicine doctors. Like very recently, Dr. Mary Claire came up with a book called The Menopause, and it's being read by a lot of even practitioners. Patients are taking it to their doctors and saying, hey, this is where I learned this from. Can you run this test? Can you give me this hormone because replacement therapy? Because she's kind of brought this a lot to the forefront as well. But with that data, we're also going to see a lot of people who are going to be even more confused. So you're going to have to become an advocate for your own health, your own body. And that's going to, by understanding that lifestyle is your responsibility, number one. We all got to be responsible for ourselves when it comes to food, how we manage stress. We need to teach and train our bodies how to adapt to stress, because that's the only difference between somebody who is well and somebody who is not well, is how they are adapting to the stresses that are being put on their body. Could be physical, could be chemical, could be emotional. But listen, we're all going to have stress at all times. Cannot run away from it.
So how would you say we build resilience overall for the multifaceted areas of stress? Obviously, we have chemical stress, physical, environmental, emotional stress. How do we, and not to put you on the spot with that, but do you have feelings about how people can build up their overall resilience to all these essentially external threats that are such a rampant part of our modern lifestyle?
Yeah, so I would say number one is listening to your body. So if you have these common symptoms like low energy, low libido, not being able to fall asleep at night, or if you fall asleep at night, waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, or IBS issues, digestive issues like constipation, diarrhea, maybe it's alternating between the two, bloating, distension, soon after you eat, cravings for sugars. These are some signals. I mean, they're very common around our society, right? And I would even go as far as saying irritability and mood swings. I mean, we have more people who are so sensitive. You don't know what you're going to say to somebody that's going to trigger somebody in a bad place, right? So a lot of us are holding ourselves back. And that's become very common. And even though we are tired all the time, we still can't sleep at night, right? So but I would say start by paying attention to your body, because all these symptoms and signals that our body is giving us is merely telling us there is some imbalance somewhere, right? And okay, you don't take medications to suppress them, but if you start taking magnesium or try to research what's the best form of magnesium, if I take my magnesium, I can sleep, or this form lets me be less anxious or less irritable, we're still suppressing the cause of the problem, why that magnesium is so low in the first place. So listening to your body is the number one key, paying attention to those symptoms and then looking at those symptoms as signals. Because I'll tell you, over the last 13 years, as I've delved into this functional medicine practice and tried to get into lifestyle programs for people how to break the vicious cycle, it's not about how do we cure something. The reasoning here is our human bodies were not designed to get sick. We are designed to heal if we put it in the right environment. So number one, listen to these common signals or symptoms to your body. Number two, pay attention to the composition of your body, how it's changing, what's changing. And then going step by step, start with gut, start to put good foods in. we all know what a good food is. We all know what a processed food is at this point, right? We know what's bad for us overall realm of things. If a food needs to be cooked, right, it needs to be not for coming from in packaging. So start focusing on whole foods first, and then start adding movement, and also start being mindful, taking a few deep breaths in. And if doing all those things, you're still not able to get better, then you need to seek somebody's help who could help you figure out what else could be causing the issue. And that's where we get into gut dysbiosis, looking at maybe is it a gut wall lining issue? Is there SIBO? There's so many things that could be the cause, even though many women present with the same symptoms, which is bloating, low energy, low sex drive, weight gain, and brain fog. It's not necessarily cognitive decline. These are just common signals that we say, hey, it must be my hormones changing.
Right. And I like that you said that because I think it's a lot. People are trying to eat the whole elephant, so to speak, or figure everything out. So I think you have some professionals you have maybe trying to figure out the absolute issue for everyone right off the bat when those other things haven't been done, or you have individuals that are overwhelmed with where to start because they're looking at all this different information, too much information, without going to some of those basic foundations that you just talked about. Work on your gut and your nutrition and your mindfulness and your health. For Pete's sake, how many of us don't breathe? Do you know how often, do you know how much I learned about my own breathing? For years, I will struggle with breathing well on a chronic basis because I would just be so tense and high strung, and I'm such a productive person. And so I learned the two deep breaths in, like you do if you've been crying really hard, if you've ever cried really hard and then your body, like a kid will do, but you realize you feel so chill after you cry like that. I started realizing that specific type of breathing was incredible for my anxiety and for kind of resetting my nervous system. And it's if I do that a couple times and I feel that much better, my goodness, what kind of stuff have I been just default doing to my body on a daily basis, and how much of that we're busy trying to dig into perimenopause when we didn't even think to breathe and to eat some real food first and practice that for a while and see if it did something.
Yeah, and there are only 4 main pillars of health, right? Of course, food is number one in my books, I say. So food can be medicine, food can also be poison to your body. Number 2 is exercise. We all know we need to have that pillar really grounded for ourselves, because not only exercise is good for just feeling good, enhancing your mood or lowering your anxiety, but it's also cardioprotective. It also helps you balance many hormones as well. And number 3, I would say, is detoxing, or getting your body in really good balance. And when I say detox, I don't mean to say just drink some juices, take some cleanses, sit by the toilet for next 3 days. That's not the detox I'm talking about. But on daily basis, how our gut is functioning. Is it absorbing? Is it digesting? If you're putting good nutrition in, if you're having good macronutrients, which is your good carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, they should be converting it into all your vitamins, minerals, hormones, and cofactors as we need if the gut wall lining is working. And of course, the last one, the 4th, I say, is hormone balance. Because if the hormones are not balanced, and there is not one hormone, one problem, one solution, and that's why I have a little bit of a problem with hormone replacement therapy, running to hormone replacement therapy as number one tool, because most of these hormones, their job is to communicate with each other, and there are over 50 essential hormones in the body. So if one is off, we have others that are imbalanced. How can we just focus on our sex hormones, or just thyroid, or just cortisol? Our bodies don't work that way. And I will say, if you are having and you realize that there is an issue with any of those, that's where coaching comes into place, because there is not one person who's the same, right? We all cannot eat the same food. We all cannot just exercise the same exercise every single day and get the same benefits. We are all so different. So to make it sustainable, that's where coaching really comes into play, which is also lacking in our medical conventional system, because there is not enough time to discuss lifestyle. Or we are putting all diabetics into one room and teaching them how to just follow this one diet, which nobody does, right? Coaching requires accountability. It requires support. It requires not just information, because we're not lacking information in today's world, but what we're lacking is the implementation of those strategies. And that's where I think coaching puts all that together for an individual person. So you don't have to do trial and error is what I'm saying.
And emotional support.
Yes.
Right. And emotional support, because that's what's so hard for people, especially when you're talking food, body image, habits. Like we've learned that more and more people now are diagnosed with ADHD, or at least believe themselves to be ADHD. I mean, they're in a chronic state of dysregulation, we won't even get into that right now. But we're seeing that then too, like in dysregulation, whether it be stress, whether it be something a little different on the Yes. But they're reaching for different things for stimulation. And in a world where we're sitting on our phones and we're getting all that stimulation from technology, sometimes we don't have it. And you'll see people reach for food and things like that constantly. So when we're dealing with food, that emotional support and in just lifestyle in general, that mindset support and kind of camaraderie, that comfortable space, I think is so important, because you're touching on so much deeper rooted things than just basic habits. Like, oh, you know what to do, just do it. Like, okay, so if people know what to do, why aren't they just doing it? Why is it so hard to just do it? It's because it's kind of so much more.
Yeah, that's where the individuality and the circumstance of our lives come in, right? I mean, I have a great spouse who's very mindful. Mm-hmm. We're on board with this. So our kids are on board with this. But not every family has that. That's one of the things I deal with a lot of my practice members. As women start to change their own health and their own wellness journey, they take the stress because we're caretakers by nature. We want everybody around us to be doing the right things and good things. But that also takes energy. If they're not ready to make those changes, you're not going to be able to bring them on board either. So understanding that also is a big piece to this, keeping yourself at a good place where you can help other people. Because women, I mean, listen, we will always put our health as a last priority if we could.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I can't tell, I've done like speaking, events and stuff, and can't tell you how many women come up to me and they go, my husband needs what you've got. My husband needs to do this. My kid needs to do this, which I understand with young children, but like grown adult children, but you know what I mean? And I'm like, no, you need to do this. You need to do this. If your husband wants to do it and he's ready, then that's okay. But you need to do this. And they always look at me so weird. Like they don't even look at themselves. Chances are their lifestyle isn't great either, but they see his is just so bad. And they're so focused on caretaking that they just don't even spend time on themselves. And I'm like, he might outlive you at the rate you're going right now because you're too focused.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so fascinating, though. I mean, I find, and I'm not sure what your experience is with this, but the next generation, like my kids' generation, and not just my kids, I mean, even just as a whole, as I'm meeting more younger and younger kids, they are more into active lifestyle again. I'm finding a lot more kids are not drinking as much as the other generation did,
Right.
They are more mindful about what they put into their bodies. They're already learning. So I think to some degree, as much as social media or we talk about phones and stimulation it's causing, it is giving a lot of information and a different perspective if they're willing to listen to it. And honestly, just being aware of this is such a big component, because once you're aware of it, you can start to connect dots even for yourself. You might not there could be a listener listening who could just connect all these dots and say, okay, I exercise well, I eat really well, I don't really have many problems with my gut because I don't have any of these common symptoms. Then could it really be my hormones, Then you can delve just into that and manage that. And if you need to use hormone replacement therapy, I mean, those options are available.
Yes, that's what we need to do. You just inspired me. What we need to do is come up us wellness people, especially our generation, millennial and above. We need to come up with a really rad like TikTok trend that promotes nutrition. You know how they have these weird TikTok trends, and they'll have this special saying that they tied. I mean, I don't even get it because it's not really my thing, but that's what we need to do. We can totally reach the youth if we find some way to do it trendy way and make it cool.
Absolutely. By not putting stress on ourselves, because TikTok doesn't come easy to me.
Yeah. Oh gosh, no! And it's talk about overstimulating. I don't even let my kids get on that stuff. But well, okay, Dr. Walia, you've been such a blessing to us today. Can you tell everyone and the coaches in the audience, and they've got clients out there and everything? Can you tell them where is the best place to find more of your information? I know you have a physical practice in California, but I know you do other things too. So where can they find more of your knowledge?
So I'm quite active on Instagram as well. So my handle is Dr. Mandy Walia. I do put a lot of ideas, tips, and things of that nature, educational pieces there. And by the way, I do in my bio have a link to what to eat guide. So if any listeners who maybe just are delving into this and want to understand, I've kind of put few things in that you could do DIY yourself, kind of learn how to start incorporating and making changes with your foods as well that are very beneficial for your hormonal regulations as well as for your gut health. So to take the confusion out. But you can also look us up online at drmandywalia.com. And yeah, we're here in San Diego, Gain Wellness Center.
Woo, I'm going to go visit you one of these days next time I'm down there. So
absolutely. San Diego is a great place.
Oh, I love it. I love visiting it. It's super fun. So you guys, I'm going to put all those links also in the show notes, so you can just click on it if you're not paying attention right now. But Dr. Mandy, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm very grateful that I got this opportunity to speak with you and had a really good conversation.
Excellent. All right. Keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much for blessing us with your knowledge today, Dr. Mandy. Till next.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us for another empowering episode of Buddha Belly Life. For more information on gut health and mindset resources, visit buddhabellylife.com. And remember, heal yourself and then empower others to do the same.